In last week's episode on round sailing,
we're launching our merch store today, where you can find this cool shirt, for example, with the design of round 3.
we had a farm cleaning day. And then Johan primed the hull with epoxy and applied a layer of peel ply in preparation for laminating the hull. The day after, Johan pulled off the peel ply and gave the surface a light sand.
So a lot of people have been asking us, why are we sanding when we're using peel ply? Isn't that the whole purpose of using peel ply? And yeah, you're correct. I think the same. Why are we sanding? I ask myself that too. But in this case, the main reason for us that we're using peel ply on the whole hull here for the primer layer is to prevent any amino blush forming on the surface when the epoxy is curing, because it's slightly colder now and the humidity level is a bit not high, it's around 70%, but the likelihood goes up of having amino blush forming on the surface, and especially with the hardener, the fast hardener that we've been using here, the likelihood goes up. So with the peel ply, any amino blush will form on top of that. So when you rip the peel ply off, you take those contaminants with you. But when it comes to the sanding, it's a bit debated if you need to sand or if it's okay to just start laminating directly on the surface beneath the peel ply. And I'm really a believer that you don't have to sand. But like I said, it's a bit debated. It's hard to find a really straight answer on this. Even among professionals, there seems to be, this seems to be an area of discussion if you need to sand or not. And in this case, since the lengths of peel ply are pretty big, it's very easy that you create a crease or some wrinkles in the peel ply, and that creates pools of epoxy in places, especially with this peel ply, which in my opinion is not very good. So in some areas we can see that you have a pool and it's slightly more shiny there, since the peel ply hasn't really connected to maybe a small spot like that. And sometimes the epoxy pools up, so you have a bit of a raised spot of epoxy. And since it's shiny, that means that you won't get a good bond, a good secondary bond, so you need to sand that area. And in this case, there were quite many of those spots, so I decided, okay, let's sand the whole thing lightly, just to take that away. And also, this is a really important bond for us, so we won't take any chances here. And if it means that we have to sand the whole hull lightly before we start laminating, that's really not a big deal. And another question that we've been getting about this is, why are we applying a primer layer of epoxy? Because that introduces a secondary bonding to the laminate. And that's true, but the reason why we're doing this is because we are laminating on cedar. And the cedar, it can wick quite a lot of epoxy. So if you laminate straight onto that surface, the cedar can wick a lot of epoxy in, creating a starved joint between the wood and the laminate. And that can you can get delamination from that in the future. So this is a way to really try to prevent that. And this way you have more control over that, because you never know which areas that will wick more epoxy. Maybe you have more dense wood in one area and it will wick more epoxy in another area, and so forth. So this way we will have more control over the process. The whole surface will behave the same way. And also, since we're locking the wood inside of the epoxy, we're preventing any off-gassing of air that is inside of the wood. Because when you raise the temperature out here in the barn, everything expands, and so does the air inside of the wood, and that can create air bubbles beneath the laminate, and that's really something that you don't want to have. So this way everything is locked in, and it's harder for any air to escape from the wood. So with all of that said, we do create a secondary bond, and that's why it's so important now that we really prepare the surface here before we start laminating.
Johan vacuumed the hull to remove the dust and then clean the surface with alcohol. This is the area that we will laminate first, and Johan measured the different lengths of fiberglass.
So I'm preparing the epoxy for tomorrow. We're going to test laminate roughly 10 square meters of cloth in 4 layers. So that means that we're going to need roughly 6 kilos of epoxy. We're going to use the slow hardener. That will give us some more time to saturate the cloth. But that also means that we need to raise the temp a bit out in the barn to roughly 16 degrees during the curing process. And we're mixing this by scale. Maybe I've said that before. This has a mixing ratio of 5 to 1, and it's a bit more accurate when you're doing it by weight compared to by volume, especially when you're doing bigger quantities like we're doing now. And it's also faster compared to the pump. So we're going to have that full quantity in containers like this on the table here. So we have the hardener and the resin ready to be mixed to save us some time tomorrow. And this whole test lamination that we're doing now is just a way for me and Malin to get the feel for what we're going to do this coming weekend when we have people over. And by doing this test lamination, we can potentially find potential problems that we might face, and it will be easier for us to give some good guidance when people are here. So I bought this jug to be used with the hardener to make it a bit easier to pour and measure the hardener. It's not very easy to pour from these big containers, so hopefully this will help. But the pump for the resin works really well, so that's okay. I'm using 3 strokes on this, and that's roughly a bit over 1 liter of epoxy. So roughly 1.1 kilos or something like that, a bit less. So this is 1011 grams. So I just divide that by 5, and then I get 202.4 grams of hardener, or that's the amount of hardener that we need for this amount of resin.
With the hull prepared, the fiberglass ready, and the epoxy measured, Johan went to the hardware store to stock up on supplies for the lamination.
We're gonna gear up now with the protection overalls. For today I feel actually less stressed, and I have an idea that it will be a little bit easier, not as physical challenging as when we were doing the keel pocket, but we'll see. It's the first time, so yeah, you never know. They only have size XL. I think it will work.
It's pretty big.
Loose fit. We'll be fine.
Ska du ha på det?
Jag tänker det kanske. Så här kan jag göra. Så. ready? Ja, väldigt lång ben. Konstiga armarna.
It's my monkey arms.
We applied epoxy to the area where the first layer of fiberglass will sit. Then we rolled out the fiberglass and saturated it with epoxy. It was easier and faster to get the epoxy onto the cloth when being on top of the hull, since we could just pour it out from the tray. It took much longer to get the epoxy out on the top sides. With the fourth layer, we struggled to get it in the right position. And we did the mistake of lifting the cloth instead of rolling it up and then redo it. So this took some extra time to get it right and added some stress. The last layer was peel ply, and that went really smooth.
So I turned off the heater a few hours ago, and this has now cured for a bit over 18 hours. And it looks okay to me. I was a bit worried yesterday that the edges here, just next to the recess areas, that the fiberglass could come off there by its own weight during the curing process. But everything has stayed in place, and it looks really good. There's no air gaps or anything like that. So I'm happy with the result. So the plan now moving forward is to use full width lengths of fiberglass, because right now we only have 4 layers in this narrow section here at the stern. So 4 layers, 3 layers, 2 layers and 1 layer. So what we will do now is to slightly overlap this line here with the full width of fiberglass, a length of that. And then the next section will overlap this line. So we slowly build up 4 layers, 4 layers, 4 layers. So we build up the full thickness of the laminate moving forward as we go. And right now I think this is a good way for us to do this, since there will be less secondary bonding like this. And we can also stop if we feel like, okay, now we can't do any more today. Then we just put on peel ply, and then the next day we can just rip that off and continue with our lamination. I think everything went pretty smooth and a bit less stressful than the keel recess, since we didn't have to deal with the vacuum bagging material. And also that we used this more high quality peel ply this time. So my plan for today is to rip off some more peel ply on this side and start preparing the hull for lamination. And also I will start cutting some lengths of fiberglass, so we have all of that prepared for this coming weekend. And then as always, most of the time this week will be in preparations for the upcoming lamination that we'll do. I'm not really sure how much we will be able to do, how many square meters we will be able to cover in 2 days of work. We will be 4 to 5 people working. But if we take it from how much we were able to saturate here in the stern per hour, we managed to do roughly 1.2, 1.3 square meters with 4 layers of 600 gram fiberglass cloth per hour. So that means that during a weekend, depending on how many hours we can really work per day, let's say that we can do 8 hours actively working, laminating in 2 separate sessions, maybe 4 hours before noon and 4 hours in the afternoon. I would say we can do maybe 16 square meters per day, something like that. So maybe 32 for the whole weekend. But that will mean that we will reach almost 1/3 of the full hull, and that seems a bit too much for me to do that in only 2 days. So I'm really happy if we can do, let's say 20%, 20 square meters of 4 layers. The whole hull surface area is 96 square meters. You know, having people over, it's not so easy to just call a bunch of people, come over and we start laminating. It's all in the preparations, because if you just bring people over and you start working, that's really a recipe for disaster. Because if something goes wrong, the amount of hours and work to fix those problems could be massive. So we really don't want to have any problems. So it's better to not aim too high and make it right the first time. So that's why I really don't want to, you know, nail me to a number. This is the amount that we should be able to do this weekend.
Johan was going to cut out 22 fiberglass length, which is equivalent to 110 square meters, or close to 1200 square feet.
Malin's family is on their way here. They will be here within an hour or so. So we hope we can start working soon. All the lengths of fiberglass that we hope to get onto the hull during the weekend are prepared, and also the peel ply. I have protective gear for everyone, masks and gloves, rollers. I have prepared the epoxy that we plan to use before lunch today, or noon. I mean, that's 100 square meters of fiberglass, so I highly doubt that we will manage that. But that's the amount. If we keep the pace that me and Malin have been having when we've been laminating before, it should be possible to get 100 square meters on the hull. But there are, of course, tomorrow people will be tired. I highly doubt we can keep the same pace for 2 full days. I have also prepared the peel ply. We will only use peel ply at the leading edge now, since we're building up the full thickness of the laminate as we go. And then when we're finished for the day, we just put peel ply there so we can rip that off and continue the day after. As you can hear, we're running the diesel heater. It's been pretty cold this night. We've been having frost. But right now we have 15 degrees in here. We hope to get it up to around 18 or so.
Är du redo?
Startklar.
We geared up and did a run through of how we were going to laminate. The electric fan was on to keep the temperature up, and we had marked where the lengths were going to be placed on the hull.
Som Malin visade innan så rullar vi ut vådarna på det här hållet. Och så ska de överlappa varandra. Den börjar.
We decided to work all together on the same section, so we could teach how to do it and give help easier. I went to get new layers and Johan mixed epoxy.
Layer number 4.
So the first session for the day is finished. Now it's time for lunch. I think it went pretty well actually. We got 4 big pieces on there. And now everybody has a better understanding of what we're doing. We kept a pretty good pace. So right now it's still possible to do all the pieces that we have planned. And as you can see, we're having no peel ply on. That's because we will continue directly after lunch, and that's not enough time for this to harden, so we can continue where we stopped.
After a quick lunch, we continued with length number 5. The teamwork was really good and everyone did their best despite it being really hard work.
What a day. Everyone's tired. Everyone are really tired. They are inside now taking a shower. We're applying the peel ply, the last layers for today.
So up until that point, we have the full thickness.
Woohoo! So we said, just look at this way. Oh, how far we've come. Don't look forward because there is so much left.
Whew, what a day. Finally we're finished. So now it's pizza and relaxing for the rest of the evening. Yeah, like Malin said too, we're very happy with the result today. We managed to get 8 pieces on there, so that's roughly 45 square meters of cloth. So in 4 layers, a bit over 10 square meters.
The next morning we were all quite beaten, but we got ready for another day of laminating. And Johan went out early to remove the peel ply and prepare everything. Now we didn't have any more marks on the hull, so we had to check that each layer was placed correctly. With the first cloths, I could walk on the cured laminate from the day before, which made it easier to reach. As you can see, the cloths overlaps the center line of the hull. And this is because we want a thicker laminate in the bottom of the hull. We did 3 lengths and then we took lunch to refill with energy.
This will be the last layer for today of fiberglass. We're all pretty tired and really sore in our bodies. It's been a hard day today. So today will be 5 layers in total, and yesterday we did 8. So 13 layers in total, which is really well done. So they're just finishing the last part of the top sides now. Then we're gonna put on a layer of peel ply, and then we're done for today. So it's been 2 days of really hard work, but everyone's been working so good. So we're super thankful for that.
The fuse just went, so we don't have any power at the moment. I have to fix this first.
What a weekend. Yeah, we managed to do just under 20 square meters finished laminate, so in 4 layers. So that's almost 80 square meters. Actually a bit more than that since we're overlapping. So I think that's pretty okay. 80 square meters of 600 gram by actual fiberglass in 2 days.
Thanks for watching. If you want to contribute to our production, you can join our Patreon crew. All patrons get 10% off at ronsailingstore.com, where you can find some cool merch. See you next week!